When Fairy Tail did end, the author Hiro Mashima made a couple of announcements, and one of those was that Fairy Tail was getting a sequel. And that got my attention, because that was established in the story as well. But the sequel was not supposed to be made by Hiro, but by another mangaka. And due to that, I lost interest completely, because I don't care about fanfiction. That is the same like filler episodes or filler arcs in the anime. So I did not pay attention to the sequel at all. But recently I did stumble on a video titled A Message from Hiro. I did click immediately, and I was very surprised by the message. Now before I read the message, there is one part that makes no sense, and also it does contradict the rest of the message. And I saw a lot of comments misinterpreting the message, thinking that Hiro has been replaced when in fact it is the opposite. So I think that is either a mistaken translation, or the guy who did translate the message is not familiar with writing terminology. The writer and the one who writes the storyboards are the same guy. There isn't one guy who writes the story and another who writes the storyboards. That's not how a manga is written. Anyway, here's what Hiro said in the message. The sequel is here. Just under a year after I declared that I had no intention of writing a sequel in the final volume of the Fairy Tail series. This part coincides with the announcement that I read from Hiro, that he is not going to write the sequel. The message continues. Actually, the 100 Years Quest project was already in place when the final volume came out, and a decision had been made for me to be replaced as the writer. I think the right translation here is that Hiro is replacing the writer and not the other way around, since Hiro was not supposed to write the sequel anyway. The initial idea was to have Ueda Sensei decide on all aspects, including storyboards and the drawings. My stance was that I had no intention of writing the sequel myself. However, the person in charge of the project insisted that I at least write the storyboards. So I relented and agreed to write the storyboards. As this was a continuation of the main series, I hope to be able to share a new appeal and side of Fairy Tail, while being careful in ensuring that the sequel is not redundant. First of all, now that I know Hiro is the one who is writing the sequel, this got my attention. Because this means that the sequel is canon and not just fanfiction or filler. As of right now, there are more than 60 chapters out. I'm curious how long it's going to be. If it's going to be 100 chapters long, then it will be 1/5 in length of the original manga. So there's a lot of things that can be done, and this seems to be a proper sequel, and not just some throwaway project. I only did read the first chapter. There were a couple of things that I wanted to find out. Since all of the original manga was animated, I am hoping the same will happen to the sequel. I never read the manga first, because if I do, then I lose all interest in the anime. Once you read the source material, watching the anime it looks to me like watching fanfiction. And it feels weird. I would rather read the manga again than watching the anime for the first time. Since when you read the manga you decide on the voices of the characters, how the surroundings and scenery look with colors, and also in the manga there are a lot of gaps between the scenes and the panels that you need to fill as a reader, to connect the scenes together. And because of all those things, when you watch the anime, even though the main things are the same, all those things that you have added, whether consciously or not, are lost, are not in the anime. And that's why the anime does not give you the same experience even though it is the same story. Based on the first chapter, it seems like it is a continuation of the original story, which is great. Hiro did mention in his message that he doesn't want the sequel to be redundant and just repeat what he did in the original manga. So I'm very curious to see what he will do, what direction he will go. Continue in the same direction and reach new levels in the story, or he will go in different directions and add new layers and new perspectives to the story. Either way is good. When I read in the message that Hiro will not be the one drawing the manga, that concerned me. If there is a manga that the drawing is very hard to replicate, then that manga is Fairy Tail. When it comes to aesthetics, Hiro is the best at it, no doubt about it. I have never seen a manga better aesthetically than Fairy Tail. So do you see why I was so skeptical when I found out that Hiro will not be the one who is drawing the manga? But Hiro is not just great aesthetically, but also at visual storytelling. It's stunning what he was able to achieve in Fairy Tail. The amount of work and detail is amazing. If you only watch the anime, or even if you are a manga reader but you had not noticed those things, I would recommend to just stare at the panels. Don't pay attention to the storyboards, just the panels. And you will notice how every panel is unique. There is nothing generic about them. Hiro has put the same amount of effort and work into the panels just as for the storyboards. Here's an example to better understand. The writer needs a panel where a character needs to say a certain thing in order for the story to move forward, and the focus will be on what the character is saying and not on the drawing. So it is not important whether it is a close shot or a long one, or what it is in the background or the surroundings and things like those. But with Hiro, he never does that, and you can see for yourself if you pay attention to the panels. He does such a great job that every panel in a way comes to life. It is hard not to stare because they are so masterfully done. The way he places the camera in the panel is incredible. It serves the characters so well and also the surroundings. They are not hindering each other, but they are complementing each other. And every panel gives a different emotional vibe depending on what it is going on in the story. If Hiro would want to be a movie director, he can do it easily. I have no doubts that he can be one of the best directors ever. So with all that being said, was Ueda able to replicate Hiro's style? Well, no, he was not. Based on what I saw in the first chapter, he was not able to do it, which is not a surprise to me. Now, one thing that I would say is that when it comes to certain aspects, he's not trying to imitate Hiro. He's trying to do his own thing, wherever the story allows it, and he did a good job. And also this might be good, because it will add new elements to the story. So I will wait to see if the sequel will get an anime adaptation. If not, I will read the manga. Either way, I'm really excited. And lastly, as you probably know, that Hiro has a new manga called Eden's Zero that has been published weekly for a while now. When the first chapter came out, I did read it because I was curious to see what the story is about. And I was really intrigued. I was very interested in the story. Since I did talk in this video about how great Hiro is at visual storytelling, well, based on what I saw in the first chapter, Eden's Zero is better than Fairy Tail. He outdid himself. The obvious reason why it is better is that the more experience the writer gets, the better he will become. And the other thing is that Eden's Zero is a science fiction story and not fantasy like Fairy Tail. So this means that the drawing is a lot more detailed and layered, so here he can show his skills a lot more. Because when you are drawing a fantasy story, you need to use less details and layers in order to look like a fantasy world, and to give you that feeling. The drawing needs to be free and borderless, less edges as possible. While it is the opposite for a science fiction story, and that's why it requires a lot more work, and thus the end result is a lot better. Not that I'm comparing between the two, I'm just being technical. Anyway, it was announced that Eden's Zero will be animated, which is great. But the anime was postponed, just like so many other animes, because of the problems that the studios are facing. I hope it will start airing soon. I'm really excited about Eden's Zero. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.